What's up guys, Tao here. Welcome to my system build video. In today's video I'm going to show you how to build a compact Hackintosh for content creators. Alright, first thing, let me run through the components I'll be using for this build very quickly. First is the Thermaltake Core V1 Snow Edition Mini-ITX case. It's in white. It's a very pretty little case. Second is the motherboard is ASUS H97i Plus Mini-ITX motherboard. Now I really like this motherboard. First, it has all the connectivity you want. It's Wi-Fi, it has .2 slot at the back, and also it has a mini PCI Express, a Wi-Fi card slot. Overall, it's a fantastic little board. To power everything, it's the Corsair CX450M. Now this is the semi-modular semi-modular power supply. Again, I'm trying to keep the cost down. This is perfect for the build. It's ATX power supply. Now the graphics card is the EVGA GeForce 1050 Ti. Now this is the single fan edition. You do not need extra PCI power supply for this graphics card. So again, perfectly for this small build. Now the fan, the CPU cooler is the Noctua NHL965 CPU cooler. It's really good, and the fan is really quiet. Again, it's good for the small build. The RAM is the Crucial basic RAM. It's DDR3. In total is 16 gig. So for any content creators, I think it's more than enough. The storage is the SanDisk M.2 SSD. This is 120 gig. Mainly just for the system. I think if if you don't dump a lot of content on the default drive, 120 gig is perfect. Now the brain of the system is the i7-4790. Now this is perfectly fine for any, to me, in my opinion, good for any content creators. Again, bear in mind the budget is maximum £700. Now here is the Western Digital 3.5 inch drive. This 1 terabyte is WD Blue, running at 7,200 RPM. So if you can dump all the library on the hard drive, that will still give you pretty good performance. Just to give the entire build a little glow, here's the USB LED light strip. I still haven't figured out how to where to place this light, but we'll see how it goes. Primarily, my idea is place underneath the case, so make the case glow. We'll see how that goes. Now I will unbox everything and put everything on the table, and then we will start working from the beginning. Okay, they are out of the box. Now, first thing I just want to mention, before you actually touch any electronic components, like a motherboard, like a graphics card, if you can, try to get rid of the statics in your body. So the easiest way, what I normally do is, before I actually touch it, I just touch the radiator, because they actually connect to the ground, I think, as far as I know. So just let your statics go out, just in case you have some statics left in your body. So what I normally do is I will strip down the case, so that's a lot easier for me to work with. And then I will put in the process on the motherboard, and I will show you guys the steps. Okay, here's the case. I'm gonna install the processor onto the motherboard. Now let me show you guys. Here's the motherboard. See it? Alright, I'm going to show you how to install the CPU, the central processing unit. Now, normally you will see, here's the CPU cap, which is the CPU socket cap. So what you normally do is, you don't need to worry about this just for now, because that will come off once you actually trying to lock the processor. So here is a little latch. So you just gently put it out, and that will lift itself automatically. Here's the socket. So you just go all the way back there. What I normally do is, even the new motherboard, I will make sure the pins not damaged. Just double check the pins, make sure it's not damaged. Now, here's the processor. What you do is make sure here's a little arrow here on the bottom left corner when you're facing the processor. So you just gently this arrow will be lined up against to that corner. So you probably can see here's a arrow here as well. So you just line up the corner here and gently let go. So that will sit inside the socket perfectly. I normally do it just wiggle a little bit, make sure it is in there comfortably. Now you just close the lid. Here's another latch, or here. Make sure here's a gap in between. Now make sure that this actually screw will stop the socket lid from moving. So make sure it's in between. So after that, you push back in. See, it will pop out automatically, and then gently again lock it. That's it, guys. Here's the CPU installation. So this will pop up automatically. Alright, next I will be installed CPU cooler. This is the Noctua NH-L965 CPU cooler. Now, just bear in mind, if you have different coolers, the installation procedure may be different. This just for the guide. This actually is only for the Noctua L965 cooler. Again, if you have different CPU cooler, the installation will be different. Before I do that, I need to install the bracket first. Let me just go ahead to do that. Now this actually I put it together already, but let me disassemble it. I'm going to use this to clean the processor and also the CPU cooler. Just make sure the surface is clean. Now, a lot of people using the proper thermal compound removal. Yes, that is probably the best way, but if you don't have it, I just use the lens cleaning wet wipes. I've been using this for quite a long time. To me, it's sufficient enough to get rid of the residue on both sides, so either on the processor or on the cooler. Here's the thermal compound. This one I'm using is the Arctic MX2. You can use any compound as long as you think it's good enough. Now, in terms the compound, you don't have to put a whole lot of compound in there. So once the cooler against the processor, the compound will spread out. So what I normally do is just put a little bit in the middle. So once the cooler on the processor, so it can spread out evenly. So to me, that is perfectly sufficient. And then just the cable. Now, because the header is here, so I will put in this way, because give you plenty room for the cable. Now make sure this is aligned. Okay, and then Noctua normally give you one of those screwdriver for installation. So because that's the screws, so you gently now try not to screw one side all the way down, so that will be uneven. So work your way through bit by bit. So make sure the contact, the cooler contact, the CPU is evenly. Okay, to me, this is perfect. See the connection there. That's the other side. Okay, that's CPU cooler installed. It's very secure. Okay, now next I'm gonna install the RAM. Some of the RAM may come in its own heat spreader, so that it just to reduce the heat a bit more if you do overclock the system. Now the way to install the RAM, you can see here's a cutout. There's 240 pin. Now the cutout, there's also a divider on the RAM slot. So I just line up the slot here. I just gently click the RAM in. Here, that's the click. Now, you might, in terms the procedure installing RAM and the CPU cooler, you might find differently on your own motherboard. Depends on the cooler. Now, this cooler will be compatible with any kind of motherboard, so there's no obstruction to the RAM. So that's why it doesn't matter which one you install first. But in this particular case, I installed the CPU cooler first and the RAM second. As you can see, there's no contact, there's no obstruction. But your one may be different. This is second steam here. Again, do the same. Here we go. Done. That's the RAM and the CPU cooler installed. Now, next is the M.2 slot. Now here's a little trick. If you have a screwdriver, it's not magnetized like this. All you need to do, if you find a tiny magnet and put a magnet on the actual screwdriver. That's it. You have a magnetized screwdriver. It's really handy, and it's really useful as well. Here's the tiny little screw here. Yes, let me just unscrew this rather. I don't like screw things sometimes. Here's the M.2. Just line up. So there's only one way you can put it in there. So as you can see, one side is slightly wider than the other. So there's only one side you can slot in. So that is this side. Okay, and gently push down and screw back on. That's it. That's your M.2 SSD installed. Okay, next, let's put the motherboard inside the case. Now this has a, you can see here from here, here has the riser already slightly raised, so you don't need to install the motherboard riser. That is pretty good. Here is the I/O shield for the motherboard. You can see here's the Wi-Fi antenna installed already. Just put that in. Now make sure the way you put it is the same as the motherboard output, which is like this. So we're gonna install in like this. Now the easier way to work with the I/O shield is you push the corners first. So when the corner is in, the rest will be in fairly easily. So you just push the corners like so, and push the corners. So yeah, there we go. So I found it slightly easier to work with this way. Voila, like this. Now, if you can't line that properly, make sure you check the back plate is put in firmly or snugly. Second, try not to force it too much, otherwise you have a chance of damaged the motherboard. Now, the next is screw the motherboard onto the case. When you secure the motherboard, try to secure 2 points diagonally. You give the same amount of pressure on the corners. So my opinion, this actually is the best way to secure the motherboard. You don't get too much pressure on single point. There we go. It's installed. Now next, I will install power supply. That's what I normally do. Just give me overview. What shall I do with the cable management? Just do the power supply. Now the reason I chose a semi-modular power supply is because to me it's easier to deal with the cable management, so you don't have all those unnecessary wires hanging out. You don't know what to do. Here is a 240 pin motherboard and a 8-pin CPU power supply here. So all the rest you can easily to decide what you want to use according to the system build. So that's the peripherals and the PCIe output. Now the easiest way, best way, actually probably the only way to install the motherboard is turn the case to the other side, so you got massive opening at the back. Now just line up screws on the power supply and the screws on the case. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Here we go. Let me just find the right screws. Okay, here we go. Power supply is installed. Now, since the cable is fairly long, I will be shortening a little bit. Let me just use cable tie to make the cable slightly shorter, like so. The good thing about this case, here is a compartment here, here's a big gap. You can hide your unnecessary cable or cable which is a bit too long. So it's a great little case, although it's really small, but you know, here's the gap in between the front fan panel and the motherboard. It's right here. So here you can hide all your cables. So it's pretty good for cable management. Put this way. So that's the 8-pin CPU power header. So plug right into the CPU socket on the motherboard. Now you could make this neater to re-route the cable like this, but for now I'm just plug in everything and work out how I'm gonna do the cable management later. So just give me an overview how the build will look like at early stage. Next, I'll be plugging into the what's this? The front 200mm fan header. Here's the powers, the reset, and HDD, which is hard drive LEDs, HD audio. Here's the USB 3, the front USB 3 for those. Now here's a little bit tricky because they are quite small, so I just need to work out which is which. It also tell you on the actual motherboard, but the writing is really small. That is done. And then it's the USB 3 and cable. Now the cable management, I will reorganize the cables after I figured out how to put them nicely. I actually changed the HD audio cable from the top to underneath the motherboard. I just don't like the idea of the cable hanging on top of the motherboard. It doesn't look nice. So I moved the cable to underneath the motherboard. The gap, it's perfect. Fits the cable perfectly. Here, the graphic cards are gonna go on here. So hopefully this actually will work okay with graphics card fitted. You know what, let me just install the graphics card now. Here's the EVGA 1050 Ti, single fan. It's perfectly for the case like this. Ooh, they fit in. Oh yes. Just make sure the cable is not damaged the capacitor. There's 2 capacitors over here. Make sure it's not damaged it. I think we are good. Now you see on the top, there's no cable hanging on the top, so I think it's better. Here's the WD blue 1TB, 7200 RPM. So the hard drive will go in like so. Like this. You can see the connections is underneath here. Shouldn't be like those. Alright guys, just let you guys know what I'm gonna do. Now Thermaltake actually wants you to install the hard drive upside down into the the hard drive holder here. Now, if you guys, like me, want everything symmetrical or right side up, so because the brackets, it doesn't have any holes allow you to maneuver. Now, if you do line up the holes like this, right side up, so you will not have any gap to install the power cable and a SATA cable. So therefore, I'm going to drill a hole, maybe 4 holes, just to have a hard drive properly lined up, and then I'm going to use this. Now this is the Molex to SATA adapter. The good thing is this SATA cable actually is straight. What you do is you plug this in, so we'll have the power supply, and you will need a SATA cable, which is, let me find it. Here's the SATA cable. That's also is a straight. So you plug in here. Now you have a data and the power. Let me just demonstrate. The bracket looks like this. Now, if you do line up the holes right side up, you will not have any space for those 2 connections. So therefore, that's not good unless you want to install the hard drive like Thermaltake wants you to do, like so. Now, Thermaltake wants you to install the hard drive like this, which is I don't like at all. So, you know, Thermaltake, if you're watching this, you better get it right. For people like me, maybe slightly OCD, want everything symmetrical, you might want to upgrade your hard drive cage to accommodate the installation like so. So again, because there's a little gap, there's a little thing here, it just, you know, prevent any kind of cable go in. Now if there's a big gap here, so you might be able to just install the hard drive like this with the angled SATA power cable and the SATA data cable. But they did not design like those, so I have to modify myself in order to accommodate the hard drive installation. Looks like this. Now Thermaltake, please change it if you're watching this. That's gonna make a lot of people's life easier. Or at least it's going to make my life easier. Okay, here we go. I'm going to modify this. So I have drilled a small hole here, so just show you guys what's going to happen after I drill the hole. So the hole will like this line up. So the cable, the SATA cable, data cable like this, maybe just slightly above it. The power cable will go like so. So you will have a gap underneath, so you can still have a little bit space to maneuver. Okay, I'm gonna, hopefully this thing works. Got my trusty drill. Yep, done. Now this one is slightly misaligned, but I'm happy with the 3 points. 1 screw here and 2 screws on this side, so it's stable. Hopefully this works. Never thought the hard drive is so difficult to install. Okay, here it is. Before I go any further, I'm gonna power this thing up, make sure all the components connect properly, and then I will carry on to finish the build. Moment of truth. Right, here I have a Molex LED light strip. I'm gonna put in underneath here. This thing is magnetic, so I'm just see how well it's gonna light up the case. Now hopefully this thing will work okay. Give it some glow. Here's a remote control for the light strip. Now it has sticky tape at the back as well, but I'm just gonna see how well it's gonna light up the case before I actually permanent stick them down. Alright guys, the build has finished. All in all, the build was pretty straightforward. The only frustrating part actually is the hard drive installation. Thermaltake, I really hope you are listening to this. Please make the hard drive cage a little bit easier to work with, and also please design a hard drive cage for the right side up hard drive installation. Not everyone wants to install the hard drive upside down. To me, it's not very symmetrical. The second is the hard drive cage, the material is metal, however, it's very thin, so therefore it's quite flexible. Just be gentle when you work with the hard drive cage. Other than that, I'm pretty happy with the case, I'm pretty happy with the build. Please let me know what you guys think. If you have any difficulty or any tips on building a Mini-ITX case with this Thermaltake Core V1 case. Now you can see I actually installed the LED light strip just to make the case a little bit pleasant to look at it. It's a cute case. it just make the case glow a little bit. Alright guys, this is the end of the video. Hopefully you guys enjoy the video. If you enjoyed, please share it, like it, and if you want to keep up to date for more videos like this, please subscribe. However, if you didn't like the video, you know what to do. Hopefully see you in the next video.